Welcome to the Spoiler Room, 8 weeks of Alfred Hitchcock. The next 8 episodes, we will be covering some films that are known and not so known of Alfred Hitchcock's. We hope you enjoy the show and aren't too scared. If you do get scared, please pause the podcast, have a drink, come back and finish the podcast. Thank you and enjoy. Good evening, all my listeners out there. Thank you for joining us, my friends. Yes, we have come to the end of our rope. Sorry, bad pun. For our 8 weeks of Hitchcock. I know we were supposed to do Frenzy, but real life interjected, and so we had to make some alternative plans. So tonight, we are going back to 1948, and we are looking at Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, starring, wait for it, Jimmy Stewart, among many others. And tonight to talk about this interesting film is none other than the diva of the spoiler room herself. It is Dawn once again joining us. Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I am fantastic.
That is great to hear. Holiday season, we get the new year coming up, all kinds of things going on, and you made some rum balls, or you're planning on it, so which I'll have to visit and steal some because, well, rum balls. So,
of course,
of course, if you'll let me, that is. So you could just tell me, go take a flying leap, Mark, and I go, I understand.
You mean if Jill allows you to have them and doesn't take them all for herself?
This is true. They could take an alternate path in the house. That's exactly right. So with a rope, did you want to try to give the synopsis, or would you like me to?
You go right on ahead.
Okay, the synopsis. We basically get the story of two gentlemen who decide to kill who they figure is an inferior classmate of theirs, an old classmate of theirs. They decide to kill him. And they figure they're getting away with the perfect murder. And a way to prove this is they invite the now murdered classmate's family friends over for a dinner so they can pull off the perfect crime. But of course, things don't always go according to plan. And we see how things take a turn over the course of the evening. Yeah. What's your initial thought with Rope, Dawn?
So I don't remember exactly when the first time I saw this movie was, but I do remember is that after that first viewing, it stuck with me for a very, very long time. Until I watched it again tonight, I didn't realize just how much this movie had impacted certain preferences I have in movies and books.
Oh, really?
Yes.
In what way? I'm curious about this now.
Do you really want to get into depth on that yet?
Yeah. Let's go right now. I'm
All right.
You've piqued my curiosity. So
Okay, so you've already mentioned, as you said in the description,
yes.
plot summary, this movie is about a couple of gentlemen who decide to commit murder to prove they can get away with it and to prove their intellectual superiority, because murder is a game should only be indulged in by the elite.
Yes.
So I'm looking at this going, Thomas Harris. Did Thomas Harris love this movie? Because holy cow, the character of Hannibal Lecter is so much this intellectual superior being. Except he wasn't stupid. Causing himself to get caught. But he did almost exactly it's the same concept in the books, in the movies. He committed his murder and then served it to family and friends, which is exactly what these two characters Rupert and
And
Philip.
oh no, it's Brandon and Philip are
Oh,
the
no, no,
kills.
Brandon
Rupert.
and Philip. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Rupert
No,
was
that's
Jimmy
okay.
Stewart.
Yep.
Um, and that's exactly what these two um, intellectual giants did was they murdered their buddy, shoved him in a trunk, intentionally timed it so that his fiance or his girlfriend,
Hmm.
his parents, although mom didn't show up, but that's for later,
Yes.
the mom thing.
Yes.
Um, and then the person most likely to catch them, they invited too. It just watching it going, yeah, it's ticking all the boxes for Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, you make a great point, and yeah, now that you bring it up, I can totally see it. Hannibal Lecter's motivation, similar to the Philip character's motivation in this, in that he sees himself as an intellectual superior to most, and feels he can get away with murder, and comes up with a way to get away with the murder, and he takes pleasure in the fact that he knows other people what other people don't know.
Yeah.
He takes a perverse pleasure in this, and that of course feeds his superiority complex more by self-feeding it by saying, oh look, these people don't know this is here, haha, I am superior, oh look at me, I'm superior, they don't know. I
It
mean, because
it and it exactly, it's the arrogance, the playing with, when their housekeeper comes in, playing with the rope, putting it right in the utility drawer, hidden in plain sight.
well, he even plays with Philip. Philip was there and helped him kill this guy, but Philip has the remorse, he has the sympathy, he has the regret,
Mhm.
and Brandon likes it's like a cat with a mouse in a way of he's just batting him back and forth. He's not killing him either, but he likes poking at him. He's like Philip. He's like, you're just too emotional. Philip, you're just, and then he knows Philip is worked up. So yeah, you're right. He does the thing of, hey, what would be a great idea? Let's serve dinner on top of the cabinet where the dead body is. And Philip's like, are you fucking crazy? And Brandon's like, no, 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 we got this. We got this. But you can tell Brandon is enjoying the control he has over Philip, and the bravery proving that he's superior even over the guy who helped him kill the classmate. Brandon really is enjoying the fact that he's even superior, or at least he sees himself superior, even over Philip, even though they both committed the same crime.
We're gonna have to look into this, or talk about this in more depth, but that was a very complicated relationship.
Oh, yeah. What uh, I'm going to just say it right now is the fact of within the first couple of minutes, I'm like, okay, another Alfred Hitchcock movie with more homosexual undertones. This relationship. And what's funny is after I watched this movie, completely when I was done, completely independent, I just decided to look up some facts about rope in
Mhm.
um on IMDb. And it made me feel at least a little better knowing that maybe occasionally I might know something about films. I usually don't, but that that it was pointed out, where was it? I read in here that people were upset because of that exact kind of relationship that was implied between these two gentlemen.
S
Do you,
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it was very hard. I guess it was so just there, I didn't even think about it, but then again, different time, different age.
Mhm. Yeah, because oh, there it is. The movie was banned in several American cities because of the implied homosexuality of Philip and Brandon. So after I read that, I'm like, oh, good. I'm not the only one that got that vibe from these two. But it goes along with what we were talking about with North by Northwest. You couldn't just have that
No.
back then, especially 1948. I mean, you know, and no, it's not as evident, though I would argue, and again, I know squat, but possibly more of a sub dom type of thing.
It, yeah, definitely. Because everything about, but definitely an unhealthy subdom.
Yeah, no, no,
Because,
not a good way, but I'm just saying that it almost more along that lines than just the homosexual relationship. The impliedness
mhm,
is a feeling of a toxic sub dom relationship.
definitely. Because you saw when Philip was interacting with Rupert, and after Rupert started to get his shackles up because, Brandon's an arrogant prick,
Yeah.
um, Philip held his own and was actually successfully deflecting him until Brandon came back and
Hmm.
screwed it all up again.
Yeah, Philip actually is okay on his own, but the minute Brandon walks in the room, he just totally he folds because Brandon, yeah, does something completely different.
Mhm,
Either because he sees Philip is actually holding his own, and he's not only enjoying the fact of toying with the family and friends of enjoying toying with not only Rupert but also Philip. So
mhm.
it's like, oh no, we can't let Philip get comfortable. While at the same time he's telling Philip to relax, yet Brandon is also doing all kinds of things to work Philip up, which was kind of weird. But I think it really boils down to arrogance. The Brandon character is so arrogant.
I the I liked the way the actor held himself, carried himself, the expressions he used
Mhm.
really emphasized that um arrogance. I'd like to pick a different word, but um
Psychopath? No,
it sociopath, psychopath,
sociopath.
yeah.
There you go.
He
Sociopath. Yeah.
um he really truly believed himself to be superior.
Well, yeah, it wasn't more. It was more than just an attitude. At his core, he truly felt he was infallible in this execution. I mean, it took joy. And he was constantly smiling. I mean, he's smiling with the ropes. The ropes scene where he's got the rope and he's putting it back in the drawer. He's like having a good old time.
He
And
he really he wanted to dare everybody to catch him because he truly did not believe he was going to get caught.
yeah, he was so convinced, so blind that he did miss a couple of details. But even when it was pointed out that there were a couple details, like they get the scene where again Philip freaks because the rope is hanging out partially out from the cabinet, and Brandon's just like, ah, here. He just grabs a rope and goes, puts, and he really just feels like, yeah, no matter what I do, I'm not going to get caught. Whereas Philip is around the corner thinking they're going to get caught every minute of every, second of this dinner.
Mm. Yep, and during dinner, how he even brought it up and actually confessed.
Hmm.
He confessed without confessing.
Yes. Yes, he did. Well, yeah, so because the film opens immediately with them killing the guy, which is interesting because I read that they almost didn't that the I think the writer didn't want to do that because they wanted to keep in question whether or not there was actually a body in the box the whole time, which I thought would have been a whole interesting Schrodinger thing. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think that quite would have worked, but I mean this opening scene, which again Alfred Hitchcock is great with establishing shots. Um, I mean, 2 seconds in, right after the title, it's boom. Oh no, this guy's dead. It's like,
And
oh
it
shit.
certainly, you're right, it wouldn't have been as effective. That is something Hitchcock always had his thumb on, was what was going to be effective and what wasn't. And right away, um, seeing this dead fella, it made the audience feel more sympathy to him and immediately put them on put the audience on the defensive with Brandon and Philip, and because honestly, had he not done that right away at the beginning, throughout the whole thing, the audience would have been like, "Oh, no, 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 everybody just no, no, he's just picking on him. You just don't feel it's just a lover spat. It's just
Mhm.
whatever. He's really innocent. He really didn't do anything bad." I mean, granted, it would have been a really nice, shocking reveal at the end, but it just every detail, every line that Brandon says, every hint that he gives takes on so much more meaning because
Mhm.
you have that he was a very young face.
Yeah. Yeah. Very young. Um, it goes along with I think Andrew said it. Andrew said it on one of our previous podcasts about how he read about I think it was Foe who was a big Alfred Hitchcock fan, or I forgot the name, but anyway, he said or Alfred Hitchcock said that the building of tension you could just blow someone up, but if you show people that there's a bomb underneath the table while people are having a conversation, that adds so much more tension, and that's exactly by showing the body and showing them actually commit the murder and have the body actually confirmed in the chest creates so much more tension throughout the entire film
Mhm.
because you're like sitting there going, "It's right there. It's right there." You know, the body is right in there.
Yep.
And that's that classic Hitchcock of the audience needs to know because while it might be effective to surprise them, you create more tension and you invest them a hell of a lot longer in the film by them knowing for a fact, yes, there is indeed a body in there and who is going to actually find out.
Yep. And speaking of excellent devices to that built suspense and tension, what did you think of how the film was actually shot?
Oh yeah, the real time or one take, if you will. Which yes, folks, this is the first time I was trying to look it up, and as far as I can find, this is the first time it was attempted to make the film feel all the events take place in real time or quote unquote one take, if you will, to where the camera is continually moving. Though you can tell where the edits are, and there are actually a couple of actual traditional edits, but overall, this is the first time someone attempted continuously moving the events as if it were in real time happening, and I loved it because you're that added the tension too.
Yep. Yes, it did, because you never knew as people were coming and going, you never got that feeling that they were gonna be left alone to just breathe for a second.
Well, I know it's the way, the set was probably built and everything and how they had it, but I still think it was also intentional that when the dinner starts for the majority of the film, it's being told from from the cabinet where the dead body is, as far as the perspective of where the camera is versus where everything else is in the room. You never are allowed to too long to forget that that cabinet is there with the body in it. It's always coming back to that. The camera always moves back to that position.
Yep.
So yeah, you might move away for a little while, but nope, the camera comes right back. So everybody's having a conversation, and look, the camera is exactly where the cabinet is. So constantly reminding you, and the constant moving of the events. First time they tried this had to be wild to see in the theater, to see something like that because it's like a play.
And did you notice it actually feels longer than what the actual movie is because it's in real time? All they had to do is speed up a few segments of the story, and you didn't even notice that it was sped up, and it just felt like a much longer movie. Like the supper sequence when they were actually eating supper. Who the heck has
Yeah,
a dinner party when the supper only lasts 20 minutes?
Right? Yeah, the dinner didn't seem to last long, but that's because there was actual passage of time. But yeah, you don't it feels like you've been through this whole day when you haven't. The movie's only 80 minutes long. It does feel longer, but not in a negative way.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it shows you the change of times too, because one of the things that they talk about, Brandon is so happy he decides to break out the champagne for the party. And everybody's a little confused about breaking out champagne. They're like, is it a birthday? Is it? And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, apparently people don't just break out champagne.
No, not at that time, they certainly didn't.
Yeah.
Very hard to find. And then his excuse that again, falling right back to you pull out champagne for a goodbye party so that your, um, partner can
Mhm.
go up to your parents' house to practice for a concert?
Yeah.
That really does kind of, fall on the peculiar, eccentric, one might say, side.
I and that's the way it's felt like all the characters in here took it was Philip is I mean, Brandon is just being a little eccentric,
Mhm.
but almost everyone it almost felt like everyone was so proper enough to where they didn't really want to come straight out and say, at least most of his guests go, yeah, this is just weird. What the hell's going on? It's just like, well, this is very odd, but okay, we'll just kind of roll with it, except for the maid, Miss Wilson. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
she was
yeah.
awesome. Edith Evenson as Miss Wilson, who was their maid, or I guess maid, right? Or housekeeper, I should say.
Maid, housekeeper, um,
General
butler.
butler, servant
Yeah.
person. Yeah, she went on their errands. She cooked their meals. She set up their parties or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
they must have been obviously, since they were talking about their background and prep school and blah, 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 they were very well to do.
yes, they were, and I'm not familiar with the play that it was based off of, but it almost felt like there was a bit of a satirical look at the rich with this.
Oh, most definitely.
Okay,
There
good. I'm
was
not off.
no, not off. It falls in that whole the whole concept that just because you're rich and well educated makes you think that you are superior to other people.
Hmm.
It's the yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you had everybody else in here as well. All the other upper class guests who as well felt they felt almost a little bit like caricatures of sorts.
Yeah.
In here, you had Kenneth, who was the friend of Dead Man David. Uh, who I think I'll call him that from now on. Dead Man David. You had Kenneth,
Dead man David.
who he was invited because of course Philip wanted everybody who David knew to be there. And then you have Janet. Dawn, what'd you think of Janet?
Another strong female character.
Mm-hmm.
Putting aside what we know is going on with Dead Man David
Yes.
and everything else, she's the only character that actually made sense to me.
Really?
Yes. So she shows up. Obviously, she and Brandon had been friends for a while. They have some history, close enough for to be all touchy, cuddly, conspiratorial.
Yes.
And so she kind of knew that something was off right away because they had the conversation of, I haven't been with, that I'm with David now. That, was it Kenneth and I broke up a long time ago? These things.
Yes.
Why did you invite Kenneth? And she knew it was to play with him, to
Oh
play
yeah.
with her.
Mm-hmm.
But she showed obvious concern with where's David. She showed, you know, I felt that for the most part, her interaction with David's parents were appropriate,
Yeah.
but she actually worked through her problems.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know why they felt the need to put that in there, but ex except for filler,
It it
it
it
wasn't integral to the plot.
it it was filler a bit, and also, uh, as you mentioned, it's a strong female character, and it just I I think part of the reason why they put that in there because you get that scene where because we know the history, she has worked her way through some of these friends, because especially in 48, we're talking high society here. People end up crossing paths relationship wise. It
Mhm.
just ends up that way. It's similar like high school. At some point, everybody dated someone. Yeah, they at one point were dating, everybody else. So,
Mhm.
and she has. So Janet's been through this, but I think part of the reason you have this and where it was going with this is you had the Janet and Kenneth scene where they kind of have a heart to heart where we find out that what you think in the beginning that Janet may have been the one to end the relationship with Kenneth, we find out that's wrong, which
Mhm.
actually surprises me because the way they introduce her character and everything, and the way she's talked to, and the way everybody talks about her, well, at least Brandon, and you kind of think that, oh yeah, maybe she is just, she dropped Kenneth like a hot potato for David, but then you have the conversation where you find out, no, Kenneth was the dumbass, and he broke it off with Janet, and
Interesting.
you know, and you have that touching scene where it's just the two of them. And where I'm going with this train of thought is I think they put this in there to show you that not all of the high society people in this, uh, uh, in this dinner party are like Brandon and Philip. It's showing that these folk, they're real people.
Mhm.
And that's what I got from that scene is it's showing that they put up with Kenneth and Janet both have put up kind of a front, but now that they're alone together and kind of having it talking about each other, you could tell that as much as you hate to admit it about Brandon bringing these two together, he is right on a little bit of the aspect that there is still something between these two. Or at least regret. Not so much maybe love now, but there is regret in
Well,
in
yeah, there's was definitely unresolved. There was definitely something unresolved between them, but with that conversation with him with Kenneth, well, finally asking point blank and realizing that she really does love David, it
Mhm.
does finally get resolved and they can move on. But
Right.
yeah, you're right. The way they handle things um, is very different than what we see David and Philip. Sorry,
Brandon.
Brandon and Philip doing.
Yeah. And I think that's to show you that not all of them are like that because when we're first introduced to all these characters, they're all caricatures and rather eccentric. Kenneth is kind of the young nice guy, who apparently, he used to be in a relationship with Janet is kind of maybe the lovesick puppy some people think, and Janet is the woman who is just, traveling through society circles, and you have the crazy aunt and the dad of David, who are the old money, so to speak, kind of a older school type of thing. And then you have Rupert, played by Jimmy Stewart, who actually doesn't show up until 28 minutes into this 80-minute long movie.
Yep.
Who is the older, wiser, though he was younger, I guess, actually in the play, but the older, wiser of the folk who is quirky, to say the
That's one
least.
word for it.
What'd you think of Jimmy Stewart's Rupert?
You know, at first, I was really wondering if he had been badly cast. Um,
He felt Stewart, I guess, later on felt he was badly cast in it.
I can see why. He's he was very Jimmy Stewart really very much played the same character for most of his career.
Mm-hmm.
For good or for bad, a good guy or a bad guy. He played a very emotional, morally
Morally conflicted.
strong morals, whether it was, good morals or bad morals, whatever. You know, but he played the same. He never played a hugely intellectual kind of character, unless I'm forgetting something glaring. Um,
No, not really. I mean, yeah, up until I mean, was it? Yeah, not real. I don't think he really did.
yep,
Like
he's known as the
to this,
everyman for a reason.
yeah, he was the everyman guy.
So in this, he's supposed to be this highly intellectual, um, kind of almost head in the clouds that believes so strongly in intellectualism and the superiority of intelligence that he was teaching what Brandon perceived as, this that he even got compared to. They even compared it that the Ubermensch.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, they even compared it to the Ubermensch. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that Jimmy Stewart's character I got the impression that Rupert just enjoyed arguing and debating for the sake of expanding his understanding of things. And it didn't matter to him whether he'd pick a side he believed in or not, because he just wanted to further his understanding. And that's a thing that I don't think the character Brandon grasped.
No, Brandon took him literal.
Yeah.
Brandon didn't realize that Rupert, when he talked about, because Rupert was kind of the one that planted the seed, unbeknownst to Rupert,
Hmm.
of Brandon to actually kill an inferior, because Rupert had talked about these notions of superiority. And in fact, during dinner, they have this rather morbid conversation about, how murder could solve a number of issues. And this is where I kind of think Jimmy Stewart was miscast, because uh, the way this conversation I know is intended for, and it's still a bleak, it's just a morbid discussion about
Hmm.
murder. I think it was supposed to play off a little bit differently than it did, but because it's Jimmy Stewart, and him feeling like he's not quite comfortable in this role, it comes off differently than what it was. I mean, could you imagine apparently Cary Grant was supposed to be Rupert, um, who I think would have pulled it off maybe a little better, because yeah, Stewart just comes off, I don't know, it's just awkward. It's
Yeah, yeah. Cary Grant has can do that high society hoity-toity way better than Jim Stewart.
well, and that kind of, yeah, that upper class charisma type feel,
Hmm.
to where the way he would have, I think, delivered the conversation about, well, murder does solve a lot of issues, where he would have did it more and maybe had a little bit of a smirk to him. So, oh yeah, he's prodding the crowd. He's doing this solely for the fact of conversation, because he wants to see where other people actually might stand, even though, like you said, he's saying stuff he may not actually believe. In fact,
Hmm.
later on when we get the reveal, as he puts the pieces together, he talks to Brandon about doing something he never could have fathomed of actually doing, though he talked about it. He never could actually do it, because you don't do these sort of things.
Yeah, it's the difference between between theory and reality.
Hmm.
It is healthy to theorize about things. It is not healthy all the time to act on them.
Right. Though the conversation about murder, that whole little there were so many things in this film where I'm watching this going, it's movies like this, and I feel bad because as what people would call a cinephile, because I watch a shitload of movies, I hadn't actually watched a lot of Alfred Hitchcock, which is why I wanted to do this 8 weeks of Hitchcock, because I heard a lot of these films talked about, but never actually sat down and watched them completely just because. And watching The Rope, I'm like, man, this film influenced a lot of modern films yet today.
Mm-hmm.
Because, folks, the reason I say this is if you listen to this conversation of high society rich folks, Rupert and Philip and Brandon and Kenneth and David's dad and all that, they're having a conversation about murder and how it solves so many problems. Immediately what popped into my head was The Purge.
The Purge. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, holy shit.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, they're talking The Purge.
Except he called it something else.
Yeah, I forgot what he called it.
He had a quippy word.
Either there was like Cutthroat Week or Strangulation Day.
Yes, that's what it was.
A throat cut week or a strangulation day. Yeah, when he said strangulation day, and they're talking about, you reduce the lines at the theater, you could get into more restaurants if you're just able to kill someone. I'm like,
but I think he was being very satirical about that. And you get the impression, you can tell as a sane person that he is being satirical about that.
Oh yeah.
I think that Brandon, not so much Philip, but definitely Brandon was taking that as yeah, we should totally do that.
Yeah, Brandon is the youth wow, as we're talking, here's a whole nother level of, we're just talking 48, folks, so we're just out of World War II, just by a few years. And even make a Hitler reference, saying that was kind of the thought of Hitler. But here we have Rupert just giving out these ideas, and the impressionable youth, aka Brandon, who's taking what he's saying as literal and going, yes, we actually have to do this, when the guy saying it may not exactly believe it, but what he's saying is very Hitler-esque. And the youth of Brandon, is very Nazi youth camp type of thought, almost.
Yeah.
In a way, he's executing out these ideas. I'm not implying that Hitler probably didn't believe what he was saying. He did, but I'm just saying that there's a interesting dynamic there that, I'm wondering if they're implying a little bit as well, because yeah, Brandon takes everything he says literally. He's eating this up. He's like, oh hell yeah, we're superior. We could kill whoever. And
that leads me to another thought. So how easy would it have been had Brandon been more charismatic and actually had gotten away with it? How easy would it have been for him to seduce other followers like Philip? Or would he have gone on and just offed Philip? Being too little, not having enough intelligence.
I honestly think he would eventually end up of killing Philip. Is the impression I got, was because Philip had too many doubts. But you're right, though. I could see Brandon going out and finding others, younger societal types, going out and recruiting them, so to speak, into doing this. Because you get that line in there that I think, I forgot who said it. Which one was, because they're discussing about David and how inferior he was, and justifying the kill right after they did it. Brandon and Philip are having that conversation. And I think Brandon said, yeah, if he was actually worth something, good young Americans should be ones who have died out on the battlefield. But all David did was sit around and do nothing, basically. I'm like, holy crap. You know,
Without, of course, seeing the irony of his statement.
right, being they're the ones who, aren't serving either. So,
Yes.
but that was Brandon still further justifying what they had done by, oh, well, look at that guy, look at what he does. But don't we do that? Shh, no, look at what he does. It's like, yeah, and Rupert, how did you feel about Rupert putting things together? Did that feel believable?
Because they were talking about it as him being the only one who could possibly put it together,
Mhm.
I thought it was fairly believable.
Yeah,
I did. And as a matter of fact, I thought that when at the end of the movie, when he's doing the big reveal and he is going on the moral tirade,
right.
that was Jimmy Stewart was actually fit for that part. That I
Mhm.
thought he was absolutely appropriate for. But I didn't think it was too unbelievable. I mean, he was
Yeah.
literally Brandon did essentially confessed.
Yeah.
So it would have been more unbelievable had he not figured it out.
Mhm. Yeah, because they set it up through the Brandon character. They set up pretty quick that Rupert's one smart cookie, and that's part of the reason why Brandon wanted Rupert there, because he wanted to prove his superiority over Rupert,
Oh,
because he idolized Rupert, but at the same time, he's like, I want to show I'm better than this guy who I think is awesome.
and he also had told Philip that he almost invited Rupert to be part of the murder.
Yes, but he wasn't quite sure about Rupert if he'd actually go through it or not.
Mhm.
He would admire it as an art, but he probably wouldn't partake of the actual act, is what I think Brandon said along those lines. So Brandon has this interesting picture of who Rupert is, but when we
Yeah.
finally see Rupert, it's different.
I s I s I noticed that with several characters.
Mhm.
Brandon has an idea in his mind of who they are, and they're not who they really are, which brings us which going back to how he is with Philip
Mhm.
and how different Philip acts when Brandon is around versus when he isn't. Every one of those characters reacts very differently and interacts very differently with each other when Brandon is around and when he's not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They do behave differently. Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that. Yeah, because they really are. I mean, Philip is far more wound up every time Brandon is around. They have that conversation about strangling chickens, which Brandon is telling on purpose, because he know
Mhm.
Philip is. They just strangled the guy, so he's going to talk about. Oh yeah, Philip likes to strangle things, you know. And Philip's just like, fuck, I don't. Uh, but but I mean, nowadays he would say that. He didn't say that then. He's like, I don't strangle chickens. But then Rupert knows he's lying, because he's like, wait, no, you do strangle chickens, though. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, yeah, you were on a farm. You did this thing. It's
yeah.
not the end of the world.
But even there, Philip rebounds more quickly when Rupert prods him and confronts him about the lie. He reacts stronger without Brandon in the room. But the minute Brandon shows up in the room, this time with the books that they were giving dead David's dad, wrapped in the rope that they used to kill his son, which I'm just like, holy shit. Uh, Philip loses it again. He
Justifiably so.
justifiably so. But at the same time, Philip just cannot be strong when Brandon is around. But it's just like Janet and Kenneth put up a different front when Brandon was around. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Mhm.
Pretty much even Mrs. Wilson, she acts differently. But then when Brandon's not around, she's sitting there whispering to Rupert, going, oh man, this is really strange. I made this table for dinner and everything, and then they decided to have it over here in the cabinet. What the heck? That's so, she's suddenly confessing about how weird Brandon's been acting, but to his face, she's just like, oh, yes, Brandon. Yes, sir. Right away. Yes. It almost like, are they of all afraid? It's like everybody has this unspoken truth about how Brandon is.
Yeah, not quite fear, but definitely something.
There's something none of them quite care for about Brandon, but because of their position and the societal norms, you don't necessarily say no when someone like Brandon invites you over for dinner. You might think it's odd, but you still go.
Yeah.
Because I get the impression some of these people are like, why are we even here? You know?
Yeah. I yeah. Even the guests were, I mean, even the guests were very much, well, I get why you're here, but I don't get why you're here.
Yeah. They come right out and tell these people, they're like, I don't know why Brandon invited you.
Yeah.
And Kenneth and Janet knew immediately why, because Brandon wanted to prod them. And
Yes. He's
yeah,
the puppet master.
though we don't get a mother, but we do kind of get a
We
mother in
do
this.
kind of get a mother thing.
Yes. What about that mother thing done?
Well, the mother was homesick.
Yes. Oh, poor mother.
Poor
But she was still
mother.
concerned about David.
Yes.
Which added that extra tension because David's in the box and people are like, where's David? This is unlike David. And then you keep getting the reports back. Well, David's mom's called everybody multiple times.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Mom's homesick. Mother's homesick, but she's still in charge of the task force of finding out where he is. And he's giving direction on who is supposed to be doing what.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, we don't even in this movie where it's all in one room and the mom doesn't show up, we don't escape the mother. The mother is still there, damn it.
Yes, she is.
Damn you, Hitchcock. Uh,
He's got, I even made mention of the, when I was watching it, I made mention of the, hey, look, there's not a crazy mother. Oh, yes, there is.
yes, there is. Here's an overbearing mother who's calling everybody just because no one's heard from her David in a while.
And the mother, the husband,
Mhm.
Mr. Hatley was his
Yeah.
name. Very diminutive, quiet man.
Yeah, he's just a kind of just kind of
And the woman that he brought with him, was that his sister or his sister-in-law?
I believe it was his sister-in-law. Mrs. Atwater was his sister-in-law, I believe.
If she was the substitute mom, how overbearing and how vivacious.
Mhm.
And I loved the interactions that they were having, talking about the theater. And have you seen this movie? It was called Something Over Something,
Yeah,
or possibly it was just called Something.
something.
And then they had an entire conversation about movies where they just used the word something repeatedly.
Yes, and
That was
I'm
great.
I'm glad you brought it up because not only is it a great scene of them something, and then it's a part where you are glad Stewart is in there because they have that conversation at the table about something, and then when they're sitting on the couch, he kind of jokes back at her, going, "Oh, maybe it was a film called Something Over Something, or maybe just something." He drops the joke again, and with a little
Mhm.
smirk, and I'm like, "That's why Jimmy's there,"
Yep.
because that's delivered in perfect Stewart line. But what's funny is I read up on this, and the two people they mention, the film they're talking about is Notorious.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's wonderful.
Which again, I'm looking at this going, holy crap,
How very meta.
we have a meta reference in a 1948 film. I'm like, and again, James Mason is brought up, and she mentions how she thinks James Mason would make a great villain. Who's the villain later on in an Alfred Hitchcock film?
One of my favorites.
One of your favorite.
Betcha.
So we've got Alfred for the first time doing mostly a one track, if you will, as people would say, one take, a real time film. You've got Alfred doing meta references. You got these conversations that sure as hell sound like The Purge, and I'm just watching this going, my lord, has this filmmaker, after exploring all these 8 films, has he influenced so much?
He really has. And the beautiful thing is, you looking at all of his films, this film is really well done. It's this one room, strong character driven. And maybe and I can see why in 1948 it was very much ostracized, but it's
Oh yeah.
still a really good movie. But I can see why he didn't go back to the one take style film.
Mm-hmm.
Although you do see him doing bits of that. We had mentioned when we talked about Rear Window that you can see almost every device he had ever used in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the only time he ever went back to this particular device.
He did again, unfortunately, I did have Frenzy planned for this, but we couldn't make that happen. But there is a scene in Frenzy where it's done as a long take.
Is it?
Yes, there's actually a scene in there where it's a very long take, and it's actually 2 shots, but he covers it up so well, similar, almost just like he's doing here in 1948, where he covers up, as best they could, especially with the cameras they had back then, covers up a 2 take to make it one long take or tracking shot. And we actually get another long tracking shot in that film as well. So I mean, he seems, and we got that in Rear Window too. You mentioned that the devices, there are things now, especially watching these films back to back, that I notice about that he really likes doing.
Mhm.
But he does it in different ways. He's still experimenting. It's wild though how, as much as he has these common tools, how each one of these films is different. It's so different in many ways. You know what I mean? I mean, there's similar devices like Rear Window, and here you have basically everything taking place at one location. You know, you have similar camera movements. You have that heavy dialogue scenes that he has in his other films, but yet the type of film they are different. And I love that. I mean, is that the impression you get, that there is, he isn't set on just the one type of story all the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Every movie of his, he reinvents himself. And you've mentioned this before. I remember
Mhm.
talking about it before. Um, when he has reinvented the way film is multiple times through his career.
Mhm.
Wi- and once he accomplishes something, he doesn't seem to go back except in small ways. Like
Right.
he did Rear Window,
Mhm.
and then he reinvented horror with Psycho.
Mhm.
And then he reinvented the monster movies with The Birds.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's done that repeatedly throughout his career. I'm sorry, I'm just in awe.
It is in awe. And like I said, I had appreciation for him before, but I was only actually sat down and watched a couple of his films all the way through. Having done this, my mind's even more blown at what he did back then, things that we now commonly see, he was doing it for the first time,
Mhm.
you know? Um, and it is awesome to see these things. And also, if you're familiar with the time periods that these films come out, you realize just how different these films are from the rest of what was being played at the cinema at the time. I mean, some of the stuff he was doing was just, you're like, wow, this had to be so cool, or maybe off-putting, sitting down and seeing a film completely different from what you just saw, what you're used to seeing in your films. And this one especially, yeah, watching it, I'm like, I can see the modern influences in this film, and
Yeah.
the cinematography is awesome. Yes, nowadays you can kind of tell where the cuts are because folks are shooting this on film, so they could only have, I guess, segments between like 4 and 8 minutes or something like that.
No,
Because or the amount of time for a canister is what.
his no, his films, I'm sorry, I looked this up, but I didn't think we were gonna get quite into it.
No, it's okay.
Um, there he couldn't go more than 10 minutes.
10 minutes. That's what it was. Yeah.
10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
not 8 minutes. Sorry,
That's
10
right.
minutes, yeah.
Yeah, because someone had planned it out that there are actually 10 shots within rope, and
Yep.
they have it broken down. And I'm going to read it off just because I find this fascinating, because we have freaking cameras on our phones, and here they have a film device they're shooting on these big cameras, and there are 10 shots with runtime shots of 9 minutes 34 seconds, 7 minutes 51 seconds, 7 minutes 18 seconds, on average 7 minutes 9 seconds. Then there's a 9:59, there's 8:35, 7:50, a 10:06, which, man, that must have had the clapper load. That must have had the loader going, um, we're running out. We're running. 4 minutes 37 seconds and 5 minutes 40 seconds. That's insane, though, for especially back then. And I guess the cast really made it an effort to not make a mistake because they knew there weren't going to be edits.
Mhm.
And yeah, apparently they did one shot a day from 10 from January 12th to February 21st. The 10 shots were done. Which still, it's like, for what the way the equipment was back in, he really put his crew to work
Yeah, he did.
to logistically do this. And yeah, but also the fact that he just had the thought of doing it this way, you know, regardless of the limitation of the technology, looking at it going, yeah, we could do this. This is how we're going to do it. you know, I mean, man, yeah, I've grown, and I think we'll wrap it up here a bit. I grew so much an appreciation more for Hitchcock, and seeing how he has influenced films with filmmakers today with every one of his films is crazy. Is there something else with the rope you wanted to discuss we may have not gotten to, Dawn?
Nope, I think we got to everything. I have very limited notes, but I did have notes.
Okay. So I think we'll wrap it up. I mean, I enjoyed this 8 weeks of Hitchcock. How about you?
Oh,
What'd
I
you think of
absolutely
this?
did. The one thing we didn't get into,
Hmm.
which, considering his incredibly prolific career,
Yes.
um, is his pre-code movies, which is a thing I think I'm going to go watch a few of.
What?
Because if he is this daring post-code, I can only imagine what his pre-code films were like.
Well, maybe that's something we'll do another 8 weeks of Hitchcock next year because he's got so many films.
He does.
I'm finding this so entertaining and fascinating about these films. So we'll wrap it up. There you go, folks. 8 weeks of Hitchcock. We have completed it as promised. Very enlightening. I hope it encouraged you to seek them out if you haven't. I am kicking myself for not having watched the majority of these movies sooner. But when you do watch them, you can see just how prolific of a director he was, how talented, and how much of an influence he was on today's modern filmmakers, even many moons later, 70 some years later, how influential his work still has been over the years in modern filmmaking. So, Dawn, why don't you tell folks where they can find some of your stuff at that you occasionally write on the
You can
webs?
occasionally find me in theaudience.net.
You'll find some very interesting films there reviewed that hopefully will get your interest in those as well. Dawn, I thank you for doing this episode tonight and for doing most of these Hitchcock episodes.
Lots of fun.
These are lots of fun. And we got a great lineup. Not going to announce the films yet. They will be public January 1st on which films we're going to cover. But we did this last month. It came from the 50s this last year, which was a lot of fun, which kind of sparked and led into the 8 weeks of Hitchcock. Well, we've got our special series for next year picked. And I'm calling it Welcome to Cronenberg. Yes, that's right. Films from Mr. David Cronenberg. I'm not going to say which ones yet. You have to wait till January 1st. You'll see them on the website then. But those are going to be very interesting. Those are going to be, I think I may need some mind altering stuff to help with those films. So
I think you just might.
I just might. So looking forward to that. We got other great stuff coming, folks. Thank you for making 2018 a fantastic year here on the podcast. Great support. We gained a lot of listeners. I thank you. We're on a number of different platforms, and we do this because of you listeners out there and your support. And remember, if you ever have a suggestion, you can always look us up on our various social medias and, give us an idea of what you'd like to hear here. So there you have it, folks. And now I think, Don, we'll just say a good evening.
Good evening. Why does mine sound like a vampire?
Now you just sound good evening. I am Alfred Hitchcock, and welcome to Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Hey, all my friends out there looking for more spoiler room goodness? Then why don't you check out our brand new Patreon page, patreon.com/specialmarkproductions, where you can get access to exclusive spoiler room episodes and a whole lot more. You can also find us on Facebook groups at SMPRD and onto Twitter at SpecialMarkPro. Let your voice be heard and let us know what you would like to see in the spoiler room, as well as just how we're doing in general. We appreciate your support, and remember, in the spoiler room, the conversation is fresh, but we do spoil the movies.